This is the front wheel of a Bugaboo Fox, and today we're going to show you how to disassemble various elements of this wheel, starting with taking the wheel itself from the fork so that you can replace the axle, or more importantly the ball bearings, if they rust or get loose or start to break down. Secondly, we will move on to the upper part of the fork and show you how to get at the suspension and the swivel lock mechanism. The first screwdriver that you're going to need is a pair of T20 screwdrivers. It's the 6-pointed star-shaped screwdriver head, and you're going to need to insert one screwdriver on either side then of the axle. And you'll notice that these are screws that screw into the central axle. It's only important to remove one side. You can then push the entire axle out. There we go. Here you have direct access then to the ball bearings. Another thing that can happen with wheels is that hair and string can wind itself around the axle and impede the rotation of the wheel itself. So anytime you're opening this up, you want to clean out any sort of stuff like that. And once you get to the ball bearings themselves, just take a flathead screwdriver and you can pry the ball bearings directly out. There is a small metal cylinder in the middle which helps that axle to sit in tightly into the wheel, so you don't want to lose that. To put this back together, it's of course just repeating the process. Press your ball bearings, or your new ball bearings if you replace them, in place nice and tight. Position it back on the fork, and then run your axle through the entire assembly. And then screw it back in, of course. Okay, we'll repeat the exact same process on the higher screw in order to get at the top elements of the fork. You're going to need the same two screwdrivers. It can take a little bit more effort to knock out this axle, simply because it is part of this suspension spring loaded mechanism. If you need to hammer this out, be careful you don't take something that's going to go all the way into that axle and damage the threading, because you will want to replace your screw afterwards. Once you get it out a bit, you can of course just pry it off from the other side. More first. Let's see the spring loading effect. That side popped up immediately once it made it past the axle. Very easy to make dents and marks in the plastic, so it is a good idea to use things like you saw me using this towel, or put rubber or plastic plates down as you're using your tools. Eventually this bumper piece will come out as well, and now you can actually remove the entire top portion of the fork. And of course here is the spring for the suspension, so if you have any trouble with that, that can be replaced as well. But inside this then is the swivel locking mechanism, which I don't know if you've seen any other of our videos about the Fox, but I don't consider this mechanism to be very sturdy at all. I anticipate it to have some problems, and eventually you might need to swap out some of the pieces, possibly the lever that activates the button, or the small button here that actually locks the front wheels in place. So we're going to disassemble this now, show you what's inside. So the first step in disassembling then the swivel lock mechanism is to get this white lever off. You take a flathead screwdriver and pry it down on the sides here, and this is just held on to the top portion of the fork with a couple of pegs on the inside that just hold it in place into that top portion. So you just need to kind of pry the whole piece out, carefully of course. And once you have it loose on both sides, you can kind of pop it off. There we go. Then beneath that is the actual button for locking the swivel lock. And at this point, we can then remove the elements that are actually related to the little button or peg that holds the lock in place. So if you turn the whole thing over, you'll notice that there's a very tiny spring here in the bottom in a well. Just use your flathead screwdriver to pop it out without losing it. Springs do have a tendency to shoot clear across the room. And then you can push this entire assembly in. And this assembly is like in a C shape, okay? So you want to work with the top area, the actual peg, and just pop it down, and then the whole piece will pop out. So Fox is relatively new, and I don't anticipate Bugaboo selling these parts separately, even in eventual terms, but there are several 3D manufacturers, like 3D printers, that specialize in Bugaboo parts that you can find online if you have broken any of these parts. Okay, putting it all back together then, you want to take the lower portion of this peg and slide it in first into that lower hole, and then slot it all in, push it all the way out, reapply your spring, and there is a little raised portion on the plastic from that little C-shaped peg assembly, so you want to like get that in the center of the spring and then press it in place. I know my fingers are a little too large to see what I'm doing, but I think you get the basic idea. There, okay. And then we're going to take this white lever, and that activates that C-shaped peg here, of course, on this lower point. So that needs to be placed inside the well of that lever. And then we're just going to push it back into place. Go. Okay, then it's going to take a little bit of elbow grease. Take this top portion of your fork and your stopper, and you're just going to place your stopper in here so that it's flush with that top portion. And then you're going to slide this whole thing over, and this spring is going to just slot right into this well, and it should be placed on top of this plastic peg in the end. That's where it needs to find its home. Then you can take something like a large flat screwdriver and use that to help you pry it into position so you can drive that axle home. So in any case, through a combination of using various tools to lever this into place and the screwdrivers to screw it all the way in and get that final matching up of parts on the other side, and a lot of elbow grease, you can eventually get that axle back in place. But in any case, that is a full disassembly of a Bugaboo Fox front wheel, both removing the wheel from the fork in order to take care of the ball bearings in the axle, as well as the top portion in order to fix any problems you might have with the swivel lock or suspension. We hope this video was useful to you, and if it was, we ask that you subscribe as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.